She was 12, flying solo for the first time, until a flight attendant ripped up her ticket in front of a crowd. Why? She didn't look like first class. They called her name once over the intercom. "Passenger Arielle Martin, please proceed to gate C12 for pre-boarding." The voice was calm, almost bored, but for Arielle, it felt like a drum roll. She took a deep breath, adjusted the strap on her floral carry-on bag, and walked through Terminal 2 of the Sacramento International Airport. Her heart beat a little faster with every step. This wasn't just any trip. This was her first flight alone. No parents. No big cousin holding her hand. Just her, flying across the country to Birmingham to see Grandma and Pop-Pop for the summer. She wore a navy blue cardigan over a white dress with yellow sunflowers on it. Her braids were freshly done, gathered into a neat ponytail with a yellow ribbon that matched the flowers on her dress. She looked like what she was, 12 years old and trying her absolute best to make a good impression on the world. As she approached gate C12, she noticed the woman at the counter, blonde, mid-40s, businesslike. Her name tag read Cheryl. Cheryl Whitman. She had that look like she didn't smile unless someone was watching. The kind of person who did everything by the book, but only when it suited her. Ariel stepped up and smiled. "Hi, I'm Arielle Martin. I'm flying to Birmingham. I think they called me for pre-boarding." Cheryl didn't look up right away. She typed something into the computer. Her lips were tight, her expression sharp, and when she finally glanced up, her eyes skimmed Arielle from top to bottom like she was scanning a barcode. "Young lady," Cheryl said, "this is the priority boarding line. Are you sure you're in the right place?" Arielle's smile faltered. "Yes, ma'am. My dad said I'm flying first class." Cheryl raised an eyebrow. "First class?" She said it slowly, like it was a foreign word. "Let me see your ticket." Arielle reached into the side pocket of her carry-on and handed it over. Her dad had printed it out at home that morning and even circled the seat number, 1A. Cheryl stared at it, then back at Arielle. She didn't even scan it. "I don't think so," she muttered. She leaned over the counter, called to the other agent, an older man with gray hair at the gate next door, then turned back and shook her head. "This isn't real," Cheryl said flatly. "Kids don't fly first class by themselves. You must have taken someone else's ticket." Arielle blinked. "No, ma'am, my dad, he booked it for me, I swear. He travels for work all the time and—" Before she could finish, Cheryl took the ticket in both hands and tore it clean in half, just like that. Arielle gasped. "Wait, why'd you do that?" "Young lady, I don't know what game you're playing, but this ticket is not valid. Now step aside before you make things worse for yourself." The words hit her like a slap. Her ears got hot, her throat tightened, and the tears came fast, right there in front of everyone. The line behind her had gone quiet. A man in a blazer coughed. Someone else muttered, "She's just a kid." But Cheryl didn't budge. She crossed her arms and stared at Arielle like she was a problem that needed removing. Arielle took a step back, clutching the halves of her ticket in one hand and her phone in the other. Her fingers were shaking, but she pressed her dad's contact and hit the call button. He answered on the second ring. "Baby girl, everything okay?" Her voice cracked. "Daddy, she tore up my ticket." But while Arielle was on the verge of breaking down, her father was already on his feet and just a few gates away. Darius Martin didn't run. He didn't need to. But when he hung up the phone and turned the corner from gate C9 to C12, his eyes were locked on one thing. His daughter, standing small and alone, with two torn halves of paper trembling in her hand. Arielle saw him and ran to him like the ground under her feet wasn't safe anymore. He knelt down and caught her in his arms. Hey, I got you. Breathe." She buried her face in his chest, sobbing, unable to explain what had just happened, except for one sentence she kept repeating. "She tore it up, Daddy. She just tore it up." Darius stood up slowly, still holding her close, and looked over at the gate desk. Cheryl stood stiff behind the counter, arms folded, avoiding his gaze now. "Excuse me," Darius said, his voice calm but firm. "Are you the one who tore up my daughter's boarding pass?" Cheryl hesitated, then she pulled herself up, like she had every right to be defensive. "She claimed she had a first-class ticket," Cheryl said, "but clearly there was a misunderstanding." "She claimed?" Darius echoed, raising an eyebrow. "She's 12, Cheryl said, as if that explained everything. and first class is not usually booked for unaccompanied minors. Is that against your airline's policy? He asked. Cheryl's lips tightened. Not technically, but it's highly unusual. I assumed that she was lying, he finished for her. You assumed that my daughter, standing in front of you with a valid ticket, was trying to pull something without even scanning it. Cheryl's silence said it all. Darius handed Ariel to a flight attendant who had quietly approached from the jet bridge, one who looked confused but concerned. Can you watch her for just a moment? He asked the younger woman softly. I need to speak with your colleague. Of course, she said, gently leading Ariel to a nearby seat. Now it was just Darius and Cheryl. I'm going to give you a moment, he said, folding his hands in front of him, to think very carefully about the choice you made today. I already told you, Cheryl said. I acted on instinct. It's part of my job to prevent fraud. You wouldn't believe how often people try to sneak. He stopped her right there. That's your explanation? That a child, a black child, must have stolen a ticket because you couldn't picture her in seat 1A? She opened her mouth but didn't speak. He could see the flicker of realization, the panic rising behind her eyes. He didn't need to yell. Truth has a way of ringing louder when it's quiet. I know you don't recognize me. You wouldn't. That's part of the problem. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. Inside was a platinum badge with the company's logo on it, Martin Air. He held it up just long enough for her to read it. Darius Martin, he said, founder, CEO, and father of the little girl you just humiliated in front of half a terminal. Cheryl's mouth opened again. This time it stayed that way for a long second. I didn't know. I know you didn't. I wasn't thinking. No, you were thinking, just not about what mattered. He turned slightly, just enough so the passengers now watching could see his face. The murmurs had started again. A few phones were already filming. Cheryl's eyes darted to them, then back to him. Please, she said, her voice dropping. Can we not make this into something it doesn't need to be? Darius took a breath. You made it into something the moment you judged her before you even did your job. She wasn't loud. She wasn't rude. She wasn't even alone. Because I was right around the corner. But it wouldn't have mattered. You still would have treated her like she didn't belong. Cheryl said nothing. For once, she had no script to follow. But Darius wasn't finished, and neither was the lesson he was about to deliver. Arielle sat quietly now, legs swinging beneath the high-backed gate chair, her eyes still puffy, her small hand clutching a fresh bottle of water the other flight attendant had given her. She didn't sip it. She just stared at it like she was trying to disappear behind the label. The older couple across from her whispered something to each other, shaking their heads. A woman in her 30s with a tablet had stopped typing and was watching the scene unfold with her mouth slightly open. Darius could feel the air change, thick with discomfort. People knew something had gone wrong, and no one could pretend it hadn't. He took a breath, glancing at his daughter before turning back to Cheryl. I built this airline, he said quietly, from nothing. I named it after my father. He used to mop floors at airports while dreaming his son would one day sit on a plane instead of cleaning around one. He never imagined I'd end up owning a fleet. Cheryl looked at the floor. Mr. Martin, I really didn't mean... No, you didn't mean to get caught. She flinched. You didn't mean for the child to have a parent nearby. You didn't mean for that parent to be someone who could hold you accountable. You meant to do what you've probably done before. Assume, correct, move on. She opened her mouth again, but he lifted his hand. Don't speak, please. This isn't about me scolding you in front of a crowd. This is about you learning something before it costs more than your pride. Cheryl's posture stiffened, but she didn't say another word. A gate manager approached slowly, confusion written all over his face. Is everything all right here? He asked, glancing between Cheryl and Darius. She tore up a miner's first-class ticket, Darius said plainly without raising his voice. Didn't scan it, didn't ask questions, just assumed she was lying. The manager blinked, stunned. Is that true, Cheryl? She hesitated. It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. Not a misunderstanding, Darius said, turning slightly so the others could still hear. A decision, one she made in less than 10 seconds, based on nothing but how my daughter looked. The manager turned to Cheryl. You're relieved for the rest of the day. Go check in with HR. But, she started, then stopped. She looked at Darius, her face flushed now, but he wasn't offering pity. He was offering truth. And that truth made her stomach twist in a way no policy manual ever had. Cheryl gathered her things without another word and walked down the concourse, her shoes clicking too loud on the tile. Darius sat next to Ariel. He waited a moment before saying anything, letting her speak first, if she wanted to. She didn't. She just leaned on his arm. "You okay, Pumpkin?" She nodded, barely. "She thought I didn't belong." He exhaled slowly. "Yeah, she did." "Just because of how I look?" "Because she didn't stop to look past that." Ariel stared ahead. "Would she have done that if I was wearing like jeans and a hoodie? If I wasn't dressed nice?" Darius looked at her. "Baby, it wouldn't have mattered if you were wearing a tuxedo and a tiara. Some people don't see what they don't want to." There was a long silence. The manager came back with a reprinted boarding pass. "We've got you on the next flight out, same seat. I'm sorry for everything that happened today." Darius thanked him with a nod and took the ticket, placing it gently in Ariel's lap. She still didn't move. Then finally, she asked the question that had been sitting on her chest since Cheryl tore the ticket in half. "Do I still get to sit in first class?" Darius smiled softly. "You absolutely do." But while the boarding pass was reprinted, the damage couldn't be undone, and Darius knew some things had to be addressed before the plane even left the ground. They boarded her early this time, no announcements, no extra glances, just a quiet nod from the new gate agent, who handed over a pair of complimentary earbuds and gently whispered, "Have a good flight, sweetheart." Ariel walked down the jet bridge slowly, carrying the new boarding pass like it was glass. The plane smelled like lemon cleaner and something warm from the first-class oven. A flight attendant with a bright red pixie cut greeted her at the door. "Hi there, Miss Martin," she said, already knowing the name. "We've got you right up front, seat 1A. Let me know if you need anything, okay?" Ariel gave a tiny smile and nodded. As she settled into the oversized leather seat, she felt her feet barely touch the floor. It was spacious, quiet, fancy, exactly how her dad described it. But it didn't feel the same now. Outside the aircraft, back at the gate, Darius remained behind. He wasn't flying with her this time. He had another flight in 2 hours. But something about what just happened wouldn't let him walk away yet. He took a seat just off to the side, opened his phone, and started typing a message. Not to the press, not to the airline's internal team, but to every senior leader in the company. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't even long. It was a story. The one that had just played out in front of too many quiet passengers who, like him, were probably thinking about all the times they'd seen something like it before and said nothing. And right before hitting send, he added one line at the bottom. "If this is how we treat one black child, imagine how many grown ones we lose before they even take off." Meanwhile, up in seat 1A, Ariel sat frozen. She wasn't scared anymore, but she wasn't relaxed either. Every time someone passed her seat on the way to economy, she felt their eyes. Maybe they were wondering how she ended up there. Maybe some of them didn't think she belonged either. The man in 1B glanced at her once, gave a small smile, and said, "Your first time in first class?" Ariel nodded. "Mine too," he said. "I used miles. Wasn't even planning on it." She smiled at that. "My dad booked it. He flies a lot." "Cool dad," the man replied. "Mine only ever flew coach. He said first class was for people who thought they were better than everyone else." Ariel tilted her head. "What do you think?" He paused. "I think some people forget that kindness should come standard, no matter the seat." She looked at him. "That's what my dad says too." The flight attendant returned with a glass of orange juice and a cookie. "I added an extra one," she whispered, placing it on the tray with a wink. "Peanut butter's the best one." "Thank you," Ariel said softly. "You okay?" the flight attendant asked gently. She thought about lying and saying yes, but instead, Ariel said the truth. "Someone ripped my ticket in half because they didn't think it was real." The flight attendant blinked. "Wow, that's not okay." "I know. I'm sorry." "I know," Ariel repeated, "but it's not your fault." They shared a quiet look. Then Ariel turned back to the window. The engines began to hum. The cabin grew still. The wheels would lift soon. And yet, something in her still felt stuck. But Ariel didn't know the flight wouldn't be the most important part of her day. It would be the conversation waiting for her after landing. The flight took just over 4 hours. By the time the wheels touched the ground at Birmingham Shuttlesworth, Ariel had finished one cookie, half the orange juice, and all the silence she could handle. She hadn't spoken again after takeoff, not to the man next to her, not to the flight attendant who kept checking in with a soft smile, not even to herself. She just looked out the window. The world felt bigger than before, and smaller somehow. At the gate, her grandparents were waiting. Her grandfather, Charles, wore his usual green golf shirt and an old cap with U.S. Army stitched in faded gold thread. Grandma Ruth wore the red lipstick she saved for Sundays. They hugged her like she'd been gone for years, not just since breakfast. But they could feel it, too. Something about her was different, a little heavier. Grandma Ruth leaned down. "What happened, baby?" Ariel didn't speak. She just handed over the 2 torn pieces of her original boarding pass. Ruth stared at them for a moment, confused. Then her eyes widened and her jaw set, in that way only grandmothers do when they know someone's going to need correcting. But Ariel wasn't crying anymore. She was past that part. "I just want to go home," she said. They nodded, and home is where they went. Back in Sacramento, Darius was already in meetings, not the kind where people nod and fake listen. This was the kind where heads hang a little lower than usual. The team at Martin Air was shaken, not because of what had happened, though that would have been enough, but because of how Darius chose to handle it. He didn't yell. He didn't fire Cheryl on the spot and make a public scene. Instead, he gathered every department head into one of the airline's conference rooms, one of those big glass ones where nothing can hide, and said, "We need to talk about what we allow." A woman from Human Resources started to speak, but he held up his hand. "No policies, no protocols, not yet. I want you to imagine that was your daughter, your niece, your godchild, standing at that gate, being dismissed and humiliated. Would you still call it a misunderstanding? Would you still call it company policy?" The room was silent. Then he told them everything, word for word. What Cheryl said, how she looked at Ariel, how she never even scanned the ticket. And then he showed them something that no one had expected. Security footage. He'd already requested it before the meeting. The company's internal cameras captured it all. The way Cheryl ripped the ticket. The way Ariel froze. The moment she tried to explain and was brushed off without a glance. They watched it on the screen. No sound, just movement. It was more than enough. When the clip ended, Darius turned to them. How many people like her never make it past the gate? The question sat in the air, unblinking. I'm not just asking about race. I'm asking about how we see people. Who do we trust without question? Who do we question without cause? No one answered. He nodded slowly. I built this company to be something my father could be proud of, that my daughter could walk into and know she belonged. If we can't guarantee that, then we're just another airline. And I didn't come all this way for just another anything. He dismissed the room, but not before leaving one last instruction. Before next Monday, I want every team to submit a proposal, not about what we fix, but why we let it break in the first place. Back in Birmingham, Ariel was on the porch with her grandfather. It was warm, the kind of southern evening where the sky turns orange and the bugs chirp like a rhythm section. She finally spoke. Papa, you ever had someone treat you like you didn't belong somewhere? He chuckled. Child, I grew up drinking from a water fountain labeled colored. I know that feeling real well. She looked up at him. How'd you deal with it? He leaned back. You remember who you are, not what they think you are. Ariel nodded. Your daddy ever tell you what his first job was? He asked. She shook her head. Janitor, right there in an airport. Same one he owns part of now. She blinked. He used to clean floors? Yup. Then desks. Then ran teams. And now he runs the whole thing, she whispered. Charles smiled. Don't let nobody tear your ticket, baby. You know what seat you earned. Sit in it. But as Ariel listened to her grandfather, something inside her shifted. Because now she wasn't just flying. She was learning how to stand. A week later, Ariel sat at her father's desk, swinging her feet, watching him type. He was finishing a company-wide memo. Not some long-winded PR statement, but something honest, real. He called it the gate test. If our team can't look a stranger in the eye and give them the same respect they'd give their own child, he told her, then they're not ready to be in front of a gate. Or a person. Ariel smiled. I like that. He looked over at her. You helped write it, you know. Me? You reminded me why I started this in the first place. She picked up a model airplane from his shelf and turned it in her hands. You think Cheryl's still mad? Darius shrugged. I think Cheryl has some thinking to do, and that's more valuable than any job title. Ariel nodded slowly, then asked, Can I still fly first class next time? Darius grinned. Only if you're dressed like a sunflower again. She laughed for the first time in days, loud and full, because even though something had been broken that morning, something bigger had been built by the end of it. Accountability, awareness, and the kind of power that doesn't show off, but shows up. Sometimes it's not about the ticket, or the seat, or even the airline. It's about the assumption made before the scanner ever beeps, the quiet bias that lives in the split second before someone decides who they think you are. But here's the truth. You are more than someone's guess, more than what they see in a snapshot. And if you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong in a room, a seat, or a life you've earned, remember this. Your worth isn't up for debate. Not at a gate, not in an office, not anywhere. Don't let anyone tear up what you've worked for. And if you ever find yourself on the other side of that counter, be better. Choose curiosity over assumption, kindness over power. Because respect, that's not first class, that's basic. If this story moved you even a little, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's holding a ticket someone tried to rip away.